Hey y'all, I'm James Wright and welcome to my shop. Today we're taking a look at this weird thing. What is that? Let's find out. So, this thing, it's kind of weird. It is unusual and it looks like a router plane had a child with a scrub plane and together they came up with this. And it really is kind of that way. It has two knobs just like you would expect a router plane to have, but it's shaped like a regular plane, like a scrub plane, but it also has that really big mouth, which is even bigger than a scrub plane, which is more like a router's mouth. And it is basically a router. It works much like it. But it can do some of the things a scrub plane does. This is a Henge Butt mortiser. It comes with a bunch of different names. It could be a hinge router, it could be a butt router, it could be a butt mortiser. They're by a bunch of different names, but they're all basically the same. Really big mouth, generally a flat iron, though you can get them with a scrub, which has several uses, and then they have two knobs rather than a tote. If this were a door jamb and we wanted to put a hinge into the edge of it, we want to actually route out a little slot. The problem with most door jambs is they have a door stop halfway along it. And with that, you now can't get the router plane in because it's right up against that stop. And that's where a Henge Butt mortiser comes in. It's a router plane that can get a lot closer to an edge and it can still router plane. You can tap the iron in and out, adjusting its depth to get you your deeper cut. And then you can also adjust it to match the exact depth of whatever you're routing out. The other thing that was fairly common is to have a second iron that actually has a large camber on it, much like a scrub plane, but a much thinner iron. This iron is only about an inch wide. And that iron you could actually then use to back out trim pieces. A lot of times trim pieces you want to put a big cove in the back of them so that they sit flush on the wall and they can have any discrepancy that might be in between the door jamb and the wall can be hidden inside that cove. Having a router plane that you could then scoop out the back with a good scrub iron allowed you to put that cove very quickly into the back of trim. But most of the time people are thinking about using these in terms of mortising a hinge. So let's imagine for a moment we got a hinge here. I want to put that in surface, so I'm going to put some pressure down on it and I'm going to run a mark along this side, light, a mark along this side, light again, and then another mark down the other side, light as well. Now if I want to, I can come in then and deepen these lines, make them a little bit coarser so it's a little easier to follow. And there is the mortise we want, but we want it to be the same thickness as our hinge. So I can bring in the mortiser and set it flush down on here so it's off of the work by the thickness of that hinge. Then we can slide the iron forward until it touches the wood, rests on that, lock it down, and now my iron is up by the thickness of my hinge. Now we can put it on here, let it dive in a little bit. I have about a 30-degree angle on this at a 45-degree bed, and I can rotate it by clocking it side to side. I want to keep it away from that line a little ways until we get close to the other side. When I get over here, I'm just going to give it a few taps, let it slide out. Now I've got this curl that runs right up to that stop cut. Then we can come over a little bit more, do it again. Sometimes a few taps on the butt is a little bit more careful. It won't be quite as dangerous if you slip past. If you put a lot of pressure into this, you're just going to blow right out the other side, and that is never what you want. So we're just going to run all the way along here, clean out anything from that side. Then we can flip it around and do the same thing from the other side, except for this time I'm going against the grain, so I want to be a little more careful. And then just like a router plane, we can check and make sure that we've cleaned up everything and any little nicks are taken care of. We have a nice flat surface for the hinge to rest on. And I can come in with a knife and clean out any of that little schmoo that's sticking over on the side. Or I could come in with a chisel and chop down, but I find the knife to be just a little faster. And then with that cleaned out, we can bring our hinge back in and test it. And oh look, that's perfect. That's just glossy smooth. That is exactly what I want. Every time, nice, really tight corner. And we could do it right up against a doorstop where a router would never be able to get down into that slot. To be completely honest, there are very few times where this is more beneficial than a standard router plane. But every now and then those do come up, like you're working up against the doorstop, and this is incredibly valuable. This is much, much faster to do than pulling out an electric router and trying to route in a surface. And also much less chance that you're going to go off course and go and quickly destroy an entire door jamb. This is a really fun, simple tool, and they're rather affordable. You can usually pick them up for much less than a scrub plane or a router plane, and they're a lot of fun. If you don't have a router plane, this will do almost everything that a router plane would. So if you don't have one of these, you're looking for one and they're too expensive, you might want to look at a butt mortiser. They are relatively simple, it's just the blade is going to be much wider. This one has a 1-inch blade, whereas most router planes are at a 1/2 inch or smaller than that. Just as with a regular router plane, if you need to go down into something that's a good bit deeper, in this case this is about a 1/16 inch, that's all you're going to need, one pass with this and you're good. But if you're going down to something that's 1/8 inch, you might need to do it in 2 steps, doing a 1/16 and then another 1/16, or thicker than that, you're going to need to do it step by step. You're not going to take off the whole thing at one time, otherwise you're going to end up splitting out your pieces. And also, if you're cutting deeper slots, you may end up wanting to use a chisel rather than just knife walling the sides, as this will allow you to chop down in deeper and get a nice clean edge that goes down a longer distance, whereas a knife is good for about 1/16 inch, but if you go down deeper than that, you're probably going to want a chisel to mark out your sidewalls. The Henge Butt mortiser is one of those tools that not a lot of people know about, and there aren't that many of them out there. It's kind of a small tool. But if you find yourself doing hinges quite a bit, this can be a huge benefit. And especially if you have hinges with square corners, this can get into places where routers just can't quite reach. And it is a very, very valuable tool. If you're looking for a router that's a little cheaper, in a lot of cases, this will do it for you. And yeah, do you need one? Are they the end-all, be-all tool that will answer all your problems? No. And honestly, there are very few times where I've ever had to use one. Generally, I'm going to prefer to use a router more, but every now and then I need to route right up against something, and this comes out. It is really, really good for that. You can get about a 1/4 inch away from whatever you want to router. And yeah, it's a fun little tool. It is very intriguing, and not too many people know about it. There are several modern makes of this. Lee Nielsen makes one, I believe Veritas makes one, and they are remakes that are still very useful. So if you want to find a new one, there are those available as well. If you want to find an antique one, if you go to handtoolfinder.com, it's a website that I've set up where I list all of the sources I know of to buy hand tools. It is pretty much everything I have ever heard of, as well as a map of the entire world with pins on it. It is online sellers and collectors and different people you can go and find trusted sources for buying antique tools. So handtoolfinder.com, I'll leave a link to that down below. If you do have any other questions or thoughts or something that these do that I didn't talk about, I'd love to hear that. I do always love reading through the comments. I read through all of them and I answer as many as I possibly can. So if you have questions, throw those down there. That does actually help out the channel to put comments on there, so thank you for that. As well as hitting like and share and subscribe. Those get us in front of more people and help us keep going. Thank you. If you want to take it one step farther and really help out the channel, there are the patrons on Patreon. Everyone scrolling over the side are people who are financially helping us and keeping this channel going. We are completely funded by you, the viewer. So patrons, as well as members who've clicked the join button down below, thank you. Without you guys, this channel wouldn't exist. So if you'd like to find out more about that, there is a link to Patreon in the description down below, or click the little join button and become a member here on YouTube. We do have special perks for both. So I think that'll do it for now. And until next time, have a wonderful day. The Henge Butt mortiser. My first thought is this should be used for carving out seat bottoms. You know, a butt mortiser. Hey y'all, I'm James Wright and welcome to my shop. Today we are taking a look at, not that one. Just as with a regular router plane, I forgot what I was going to say.